When a billionaire stormed into the park and found his little girl learning letters from a homeless stranger, the world stopped, because in that fragile moment, wealth meant nothing, and love demanded everything. The city was alive with its usual symphony of noise, horns blaring, heels clicking against marble floors, the low hum of conversations in corridors of power. From the 42nd floor of Glasswell Tower, Alexander Grant watched it all without really seeing. The billionaire's office stretched wider than most people's homes, every surface sleek and immaculate, the floor-to-ceiling windows giving him dominion over the skyline. Yet the silence inside the room was deafening. His assistant had just left, leaving behind the faint aroma of cologne and ink. Deals were signed, acquisitions secured, power consolidated. On paper, Alexander had everything. In reality, he had nothing that mattered. A framed photograph sat hidden in a drawer, his late wife smiling, holding their infant daughter. He hadn't looked at it in months. Every time he tried, grief clawed its way up his throat until he buried it back down. Money was his shield, busyness his escape. Vulnerability was a luxury he refused. His daughter Lily, 8 years old, was growing in ways he scarcely noticed. Tutors were hired, nannies rotated, but his presence was more like an occasional guest than a father. He told himself it was for her future, that building the empire would protect her. But deep down, he knew he was protecting himself from feeling. A few blocks away, under the gray overhang of a derelict building, another story unfolded. Samantha Sam Hayes tucked her knees to her chest as she scribbled on the back of a discarded cardboard sheet. Her hair was tangled, her clothes weather-worn, but her eyes held a stubborn fire. Children from nearby shelters often gathered around her when she could manage to scavenge chalk or scraps of paper. She'd been a teacher once, or almost. Life had robbed her of the final step, dragging her into survival mode. Today, a small group of curious eyes followed her as she drew shapes on the concrete. "This is the letter A," Sam said softly, drawing it with her fingertip, smiling despite her empty stomach. "A is for apple." A little boy repeated after her, giggling. She ruffled his hair, her hands rough from nights on concrete. Sam had nothing, yet she gave. Every scrap of knowledge, every ounce of gentleness, she poured into these children. Teaching them reminded her she was still human, still useful, even if society crossed the street to avoid her. She noticed one more girl hovering at the edge of the group. Not a shelter child. Her coat was clean, her shoes new, her hair tied neatly. The girl watched with wide, cautious eyes. "Want to try?" Sam asked gently. The child hesitated, then stepped forward, her voice a whisper. "I'm Lily." For weeks, Lily had felt invisible at home. Her father was too busy, her nannies too distracted. She longed for warmth, someone who would see her, listen to her. When she stumbled upon Sam teaching children in the alley, she felt a pull she couldn't explain. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, Lily tried tracing letters under Sam's guidance. For the first time in months, she was laughing freely. The cold pavement didn't matter. The world shrank to the warmth of a homeless stranger's kindness. Meanwhile, back at Glasswell Tower, Alexander's schedule ended earlier than expected. A rare afternoon free. He decided, with awkward determination, to pick Lily up himself instead of delegating. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was something softer. Either way, the decision would change everything. He found her not at home with her nanny, nor at her usual piano lesson. Panic jolted his chest. He ordered the driver to search. The car turned down the park lane, past the fountain, toward the alley. That's when he saw it. There was his daughter, kneeling on the dirty pavement, laughing as a ragged young woman traced letters with her. The billionaire's heart slammed against his ribs. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Rage, fear, disbelief, all tangled. He stepped out of the car, his polished shoes striking against the cracked ground. Lily's smile froze when she saw him. Sam looked up, startled, her fingers still on the cardboard alphabet. The air thickened, the hum of the city fading. Alexander's voice came out low, sharp as glass. "Lily, what on earth are you doing here?" The little girl swallowed hard. "Daddy, she's teaching me. She's nice." His eyes snapped to Sam. Her shoulders stiffened, shame and defiance warring in her gaze. For a split second, Alexander saw more than a homeless stranger. He saw strength, resilience, something unbroken despite the dirt and rags. But pride surged first. "This ends now," he said, each word clipped. "If you were in the billionaire's shoes, finding your child learning from a homeless stranger, would your first instinct be anger, fear, or compassion? Share your honest reaction in the comments." The air hung heavy, every second stretching like an eternity. Alexander's presence loomed, his expensive suit out of place against the cracked walls and faded chalk drawings. His jaw was clenched so tightly his temples pulsed. Sam stood slowly, brushing dirt from her palms. She had learned long ago how people looked at her, some with pity, most with disdain. But this man's gaze was different. It was sharp, guarded, as if she had trespassed on sacred ground. "I asked you," Alexander repeated, voice measured but brimming with restrained fury, "what exactly are you doing with my daughter?" Lily scrambled to her feet. Her small hands tugged at his sleeve, desperate. "Daddy, she was just helping me. You never have time. She taught me things. She listens to me." The words hit harder than any accusation. Alexander's chest tightened, but he didn't show it. Instead, he turned his icy glare back to Sam. "You think you can just approach children on the street? Pretend to be a teacher?" His voice rose. "Do you have any idea the risk, the danger?" Sam swallowed hard. Her instinct screamed at her to shrink, to disappear before his power crushed her. But Lily's frightened eyes anchored her. She forced her voice steady. "I wasn't pretending," she said softly. "She wanted to learn. I just showed her." Her words were simple, but something about them pierced through his anger like a pinprick of light in the dark. "Daddy, she's not bad," Lily cried, her small voice cracking. "She's my friend." Friend. That word rattled Alexander more than anything. His daughter, his precious Lily, was calling a homeless stranger her friend. He wanted to snatch her away, shield her, erase the moment. But why did it feel as though he wasn't protecting Lily, but protecting himself? The silence stretched unbearably. A car honked in the distance. The city went on around them, oblivious. Sam shifted her weight, ready for the harsh dismissal she knew was coming. She'd been cast aside too many times not to expect it. But instead of leaving, Alexander surprised himself. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice lower now, less fire, more curiosity he hated to admit. Sam blinked. For a second, she almost laughed. Who was she? She used to be someone, a student with dreams, a daughter with a future. Now? Nobody, she whispered. Lily jumped in before her father could respond. She's not nobody. She's Sam. She knows things. She taught me letters and stories, and she listens. Please, Daddy, don't be mad at her. Alexander's heart twisted. His daughter's plea was more than a defense of a stranger, it was an accusation against him. He hadn't listened. Not really. He couldn't remember the last time Lily had looked at him with that much desperation. Sam lowered her gaze, her defenses rising again. I'll leave, she said quietly. She deserves better than learning from someone like me. The billionaire should have been relieved. That was the tidy ending, remove the stranger, restore order. But instead, the words unsettled him. Why did her humility feel heavier than defiance? Why did he feel, absurdly, like he was the one being judged? He looked down at his daughter, who was now holding both his hand and Sam's, bridging two worlds that were never meant to touch. For the first time in years, Alexander hesitated. His empire, his image, his carefully constructed walls, all seemed fragile under the weight of an 8-year-old's loyalty and a homeless girl's quiet dignity. A gust of wind swept through the alley, scattering the cardboard letters Sam had written. Lily bent to gather them, her tiny fingers pressing them flat. One slipped near Alexander's polished shoes, the letter A, smudged but still visible. He bent slowly, picking it up. His reflection shone faintly on the cardboard surface, distorted and raw. A is for apple, Lily whispered, smiling nervously. For reasons he couldn't explain, Alexander's throat tightened. He handed it back to Sam, their fingers brushing briefly. Calloused skin met manicured hands, a fleeting contact, but electric. Both recoiled instinctively, yet neither could deny they felt it. This moment was no longer about wealth or poverty. It was about something far more dangerous, connection. Finally, Alexander exhaled, the tension in his shoulders sagging. Get in the car, he told Lily. His voice was firm, but softer than before. She obeyed reluctantly, climbing into the back seat. Sam began to step away, retreating into shadows where she belonged. But his voice stopped her. "What's your name?" She hesitated, then met his gaze, defiant despite trembling inside. "Sam." He nodded once, curtly, as though committing it to memory. Then he turned away, sliding into the car. The door shut with a muted thud, separating their worlds once again. As the car pulled off, Sam stood frozen, her heart pounding. She'd faced countless stares before, but never one that felt like it might follow her long after the man had gone. And in the back seat, Lily whispered to herself, pressing her forehead against the window, "She's not nobody, Daddy. She's my friend." Alexander didn't reply. But his grip on the steering wheel was tighter than ever, his mind replaying the fragile image of cardboard letters in the dirt and a stranger's unyielding eyes. Something had cracked open, and he wasn't sure how to close it. Do you believe in first impressions? Or do you think people always deserve a second chance to prove who they really are? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next morning, Alexander woke with a pounding in his temples, not from a headache, but from thoughts he hadn't allowed himself in years. Sam. The homeless girl. Her name alone seemed too fragile to hold the weight of his confusion. How had he, Alexander Grant, the man who controlled billions, let himself feel something for a stranger? And more importantly, why did the sight of Lily laughing at her side feel like a betrayal to his own carefully constructed world? At breakfast, Lily chattered about the letters, the stories, the games Sam had taught her. Alexander's responses were clipped, measured. "We'll talk about other activities today," he said, masking the tension. But Lily's small frown betrayed her disappointment. "I want Sam to come tomorrow," she insisted, her voice trembling with hope. "She teaches me, Daddy. She listens, she's kind." Alexander froze mid-sip of his espresso. He should have said no. Absolutely no. Yet a gnawing unease made him swallow his anger. "Lily, you can't see her anymore," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "It's not safe, and she's not the right person for you." Lily's eyes welled up. "Why not?" she whispered, barely audible. "She doesn't hurt anyone. She just helps me." Alexander looked away, guilt prickling the edge of his mind. There was logic here, yes, rules to follow, but there was also something else, something stubborn, unquantifiable, clawing at the edges of his heart. He shook his head, trying to banish it. "Because she's not like us," he said finally. Harsh. Judgmental. Final. Meanwhile, on the streets, Sam faced her own inner turmoil. She had thought her encounter with the billionaire was a brief collision of worlds, fleeting and inconsequential. But the sight of Lily's smile, the girl's eyes glowing with genuine admiration, haunted her. She had survived countless rejections, yet something about being so openly desired, wanted even, felt terrifying. And she knew better than to believe in miracles. When Lily came back the next day, Sam hesitated. She tried to stay hidden, but Lily spotted her and ran. "Sam. I waited for you," she cried, grabbing her arm. Sam's stomach churned, the familiar knot of fear tightening. What if the man appeared? What if she caused trouble? What if this fleeting warmth was ripped away? "Lily." "I can't," Sam whispered, gently but firmly. "I shouldn't. Please." Lily interrupted, eyes wide and pleading. "He doesn't have to know. Just teach me. Please." Sam's resolve weakened under the weight of innocence. But then she thought of the man's voice, the controlled fury, the sharp judgment. She knew his kind of anger didn't easily forget. I can't," she said again, forcing herself to step back, letting Lily go. The girl's shoulders slumped, a silent grief that mirrored Sam's own. Alexander, meanwhile, had been driving through the city, unable to focus on anything. Every street, every corner reminded him of the previous day. His pride wrestled with his curiosity. Every logical bone in his body said the girl was dangerous, unpredictable, a risk to his daughter's well-being. And yet, he couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she had looked at Lily, not like a child needing protection, but like someone deserving respect. His chest tightened with emotions he refused to name. At the office, he found himself obsessively reviewing security footage of the alley, as if tracing Sam's movements could explain why his heart had betrayed him. But there were no answers, only the lingering image of Lily kneeling in the dirt, smiling up at the stranger. Over the next week, the tension grew. Alexander forbade Lily from going to the park. She sneaked out once, but Sam had disappeared. Lily returned home frustrated, muttering under her breath, and Alexander's anger surged, not at the girl, but at the circumstances, at his own helplessness. He was used to controlling outcomes, bending the world to his will. But this eluded him. Sam, meanwhile, found herself haunted by a different sort of pressure. Teaching Lily had awakened a hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. But now, distance forced her back into the harsh reality of survival. She whispered to the empty alley, "I can't belong anywhere, Lily, and neither can you." The days stretched into tension-filled silences. Lily pouted in quiet corners of the mansion. Alexander watched her, aching, realizing that forbidding contact hadn't saved anyone. It had only built walls where love had begun to seep. But admitting that he was wrong? That was unthinkable. Pride, control, fear, each chained him to his own resistance. Evenings found him walking the empty halls of Glasswell Tower, replaying moments in his mind. The tremor in Sam's voice, the bravery in Lily's insistence, the smudged cardboard letters, they echoed relentless. And yet, each time, he'd catch himself thinking, "I can't. I won't." And yet, a quiet voice whispered in the back of his mind, "What if you're wrong? Have you ever resisted something, someone or a connection, out of pride or fear, only to realize it might have been worth embracing?" Share your experiences below. Rain had begun to fall in thick, relentless sheets, washing the streets with silver streaks that mirrored Alexander's restless thoughts. The city felt smaller, more intimate, as if the heavens themselves were conspiring to force change. Lily had begged to go outside despite her father's strict orders. Alexander had reluctantly followed, reasoning he could supervise, though every step felt like an intrusion on her happiness. The park, usually bustling with joggers and tourists, was nearly empty. Puddles formed along cracked sidewalks, reflecting the gray sky. Lily ran ahead, laughing, oblivious to the storm, her boots splashing in the water. Alexander's annoyance rose, but beneath it simmered a growing unease. He wasn't used to letting life happen this way. He was used to control, plans, predictability, but Lily was unpredictable. "Daddy, look." Lily called, pointing toward the alley where Sam had once taught her. Alexander stiffened. The alley was narrow, littered with debris, and tonight the rain made it treacherous. But as he approached, his eyes caught movement, Sam, struggling with a cardboard bundle she was carrying, slipping on the slick ground. Without thinking, he sprinted forward. "Sam!" he shouted, extending a hand. She froze, startled, almost knocking over her bundle entirely. It's fine," she stammered, stepping back instinctively. "I can manage." Alexander ignored the protest. "No, you can't," he said, grabbing her elbow gently but firmly. "Hold on to this." He offered her a clean scarf from his coat, wrapping it around her shoulders despite her protests. Rain soaked through her tattered jacket almost instantly, but she dared not refuse. Lily ran to Sam's side, holding her hand tightly. "See? Daddy's helping," she exclaimed. Sam's eyes softened as she glanced at the little girl. Lily's smile was unwavering, bright as sunlight through storm clouds. But when Sam looked at Alexander, suspicion and fear returned. The man exuded authority, wealth, and danger, everything she had learned to avoid. She wasn't about to trust him. But the storm had other plans. The wind shifted, sending a trash can tumbling dangerously close to Sam. Alexander reacted instantly, shoving it aside and steadying her with his arm. Their eyes met for a moment, unspoken words lingering between them. Authority clashed with vulnerability, pride with unguarded gratitude. They were trapped together now, not just by circumstance, but by necessity. The rain would not allow them to leave, the storm forcing them to shelter under a sagging awning. Water dripped from every surface, soaking their hair and clothes. Alexander's polished shoes squished in puddles, Sam's socks were wet through. Yet, neither moved to break the awkward proximity, the space between them charged with tension. Lily, ever perceptive, broke the silence. "It's okay, Sam. He's not scary when it rains." Her words were simple, but they carried more weight than either adult realized. Alexander's lips twitched in a reluctant smile. Sam's shoulders relaxed slightly, the icy wall around her heart beginning to melt. Minutes passed. They spoke little, each aware of the storm and the child who had become the bridge between them. Sam finally muttered, "Why are you here? You could have gone back to your warm office." Alexander's reply was measured, almost uncharacteristic in its softness. "I needed to make sure you were okay." The words hung in the air, raw and unpolished, as if he had not fully realized the implication himself. Sam blinked, unsure how to respond. She wanted to retreat, to vanish into the rain-soaked streets as she always did. But something in his voice, something hesitant, real, made her pause. For a moment, neither adult spoke, allowing Lily's laughter to echo as she tried to catch raindrops on her tongue. Alexander noticed how natural she seemed, how free. And for the first time, he realized how confined his own life had become, trapped in routines and obligations, disconnected from the spontaneity that made his daughter light up. Sam glanced at him sideways, her eyes questioning. "You care," she said quietly, not as accusation, but observation. Alexander's jaw tightened. Pride screamed at him to deny it. But another part of him, the part that had first faltered seeing her teach Lily, nudged him toward honesty. "I suppose I do," he admitted, voice low. "But you should know, I don't trust easily." Sam smirked faintly, despite herself. "Neither do I," she said. And for the first time in years, her words weren't defensive, they were an invitation. Hours passed like this, forced proximity under the awning, sharing warmth, stolen moments of conversation, and the quiet understanding that each had glimpsed something rare in the other: strength, vulnerability, humanity. The storm, relentless and unforgiving, became a crucible for trust, breaking down walls neither wanted to acknowledge. By the time the rain finally eased, Alexander and Sam had both shifted. He was no longer merely the rigid father or untouchable billionaire. She was no longer just the street survivor. They were two flawed humans, connected through a child's curiosity, the storm's insistence, and the fragile beginnings of understanding. As Lily leaned against Alexander, shivering but smiling, he placed a careful hand on her shoulder and looked at Sam. Something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of shared responsibility, shared moments, shared hearts. And though neither admitted it aloud, both knew that the next step, whatever it might be, was no longer about distance, avoidance, or pride. It was about choice, courage, and the possibility that this forced proximity might just be the start of something neither expected. Have you ever been forced into a situation with someone you distrusted, only to discover unexpected understanding or connection? How did it change your perception? Comment your story below. The rain had left the city streets slick and reflective, puddles catching neon from distant signs. Alexander drove Lily home in silence, the little girl curled against the warmth of his jacket. Yet his mind was far from calm, it was filled with questions he didn't dare voice. Sam. Who was she really? How had she ended up on the streets? And why did her presence stir something so unfamiliar, so unwelcome in his chest? Meanwhile, Sam wandered back toward the alley, brushing wet hair from her face. She sat on a worn crate, hugging her knees, eyes staring at the cracked concrete as memories surged unbidden. She had once been someone else, a woman with a future, a student teacher with a bright career path. She had loved teaching, loved the simple joy of watching a child understand something new. But life had been merciless. A fire, a betrayal, abandonment, it had all collided in a single year. Her parents had vanished under tragic circumstances, leaving her to fend for herself. A boyfriend she trusted had betrayed her trust and exposed her to danger. One failed step after another had led her here, homeless, discarded, surviving on scraps and resilience. She had learned to hide her pain, to armor herself with wit and grit. Teaching children in the alley was her only solace, a fragile echo of who she had once been. When Alexander arrived at the office later, his own ghosts began to stir. Sitting in his vast silent study, he unearthed the hidden photograph again, his wife smiling, Lily cradled in her arms, their joy untainted by time. He traced his fingers over the frame, memories pressing like weights. Her death had been sudden, an accident, leaving him to shoulder grief he could neither process nor share. Work became his refuge, wealth his armor, power his shield. Lily was cared for, yes, but at a cost: distance, neglect, the subtle absence of a father. That evening, a call came. Lily had whispered Sam's name incessantly, and Alexander had finally acquiesced, agreeing to see her again, reluctantly, with tight fists and guarded expectations. The meeting was arranged at a quiet cafe near the park, a neutral territory. Sam arrived, hesitating at the entrance, rain still dampening her hair. Alexander watched from across the table, his expensive suit soaked but untarnished by the street grime she carried like a second skin. Their eyes met, and for the first time, he saw not a homeless girl, but someone human, fragile yet unbroken. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice cautious. "You don't have to do this." "I promised Lily I'd see you," he said. "And I wanted to understand." The admission felt clumsy, alien. Pride urged him to correct it, to pull back, but he didn't. Sam studied him carefully. "You have a daughter. A real one. And yet, you live in towers, behind walls, hiding from life. And I," her voice faltered. "I live in streets, hiding from the world. Maybe we're not so different." Her words landed like a soft tremor, and Alexander felt a flicker of recognition. The man who had built empires to avoid vulnerability now found himself sharing a cafe table with someone equally scarred, someone whose survival mirrored his own struggle in an entirely different context. The conversation deepened. Sam revealed snippets of her past, carefully chosen, her love of teaching, the tragedies that had brought her here, her fear of being discarded. Alexander, in turn, let slip the barest edges of his grief, a lost wife, a childhood of expectations, the suffocating pressure of legacy. At one point, Lily bounded over with a paper she had drawn herself, a rainbow over a simple alphabet. "Look," she exclaimed. "Sam, I did it. You taught me." The little girl's laughter broke the tension, weaving warmth between the two adults. Alexander caught Sam's gaze, noting the faint tear at the corner of her eye. It wasn't pity, it was recognition, shared humanity. "See," Lily said, oblivious to the unspoken connection. "We make each other better." For Alexander, every word Sam spoke, every flicker of emotion, chipped away at his pride. He realized that his obsession with control, with appearances, had shielded him from love, and from understanding people like Sam. She had been invisible to the world, yet she saw Lily, and now perhaps she had begun to see him too. Sam, too, softened. For the first time in years, she felt that she could belong somewhere, even if only temporarily. She saw that beneath Alexander's wealth and stern exterior lay a man haunted by loss, yearning for connection, afraid to admit it. And somehow, through Lily, a bridge formed between the alien worlds they inhabited. The cafe became a cocoon of understanding. Conversations lingered on memory, fear, and hope. Alexander saw the way Sam's eyes lit when she spoke of teaching, the pride in her voice despite the circumstances. Sam noticed how he flinched at certain words, how grief and regret were etched into the lines of his face. By the time they parted that evening, the tension had shifted. Distance remained, yes, but the walls were thinner. A shared glance promised that both had glimpsed the possibility of something real, trust, connection, perhaps even love. As Alexander drove Lily home, he whispered under his breath, "I've been blind all these years." And in her alley, Sam murmured to herself, maybe, "I'm not invisible after all." How do past wounds shape the way we approach new relationships? Can trust and love grow from brokenness? Share your thoughts below. The late afternoon sun spilled through the clouds, leaving golden streaks across the puddled streets. Alexander, for once, had no meetings, no calls, no urgent errands. Lily had insisted on walking Sam home through the park, and he had followed, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity he refused to name aloud. Sam walked carefully, her wet shoes squishing against the mud. Lily clutched her hand tightly, skipping ahead occasionally but always glancing back to make sure she was followed. Alexander trailed behind, his eyes flicking between them, noting how Sam moved with a quiet grace, how she smiled at the smallest of things, a bird hopping through a puddle, a discarded flower caught in the mud. "Look, Sam!" Lily exclaimed, pointing to a patch of daisies pushing through the cracked pavement. "They're so brave." Sam bent down, brushing her fingers over the petals. "Brave, like you, Lily," she said softly. Then, catching Alexander watching her, she added, "And maybe a little like you too, sir." Alexander's throat tightened. He wasn't used to compliments, or connections. He opened his mouth to deflect, but Lily jumped in. "Daddy doesn't like being called brave," she teased. "He's just scary." For the first time, Alexander laughed, the sound rough but genuine. Sam's face softened, and she allowed herself to enjoy the moment, to feel warmth instead of fear. They continued their walk, stopping at a small food cart where the vendor offered hot chocolate. Lily insisted they share it, and Sam hesitated, glancing at Alexander as though to ask permission. He simply shrugged, a tiny smile tugging at his lips. "Go ahead," he said. Sitting on a bench, sipping their drinks, the trio allowed themselves the rare luxury of normalcy. Sam shared stories of her childhood, of school projects she loved, of dreams that had been deferred but never forgotten. Alexander listened, not as a businessman listening to a report, but as a father, a human, absorbing the rhythm of another person's life. "You have a gift," he said finally, voice low. "For teaching, for seeing things no one else notices." Sam's eyes met his, guarded at first, then softening. "I just pay attention," she said. "That's all. But it's nice that you notice." Lily beamed at them, as if approving this newfound camaraderie. "See, Daddy? Sam's amazing. And she listens. Just like you should sometimes." Alexander winced, but the sting of truth only made him lean closer to Lily. Her words were bold, fearless, the honesty of a child that adults often lost. Sam laughed quietly at the exchange, noting the subtle shift in him. The man who had seemed unreachable, distant, and rigid was slowly opening, bending towards something he hadn't allowed in years: connection. Later, Sam and Lily built a small fort from discarded blankets and cardboard in a nearby playground. Alexander watched from a bench, hands clasped, heart uneasy but strangely full. Sam noticed him, caught his gaze, and for a fleeting second, there was an unspoken acknowledgement. They were no longer strangers, no longer simply teacher and billionaire. They were human beings recognizing shared needs, fears, and desires. "Lily," Alexander said quietly, "thank you for bringing her into my life, into ours." The child looked up innocently. "She's always been here. I just wanted you to see." Sam's lips curved into a gentle smile. She felt a lump in her throat, the rare feeling of being seen for who she truly was. No pity, no judgment. Just acknowledgement, respect, and an ember of something more she dared not name. As the sun began to set, the golden glow painting the park in warmth, Alexander realized that the day had brought more than just revelations. It had brought possibility. Possibility of love, trust, and family not defined by wealth or circumstance, but by care, courage, and shared vulnerability. "Tomorrow," Alexander said softly, almost to himself, "we do this again. Together." Sam's gaze met his. There was no verbal agreement, yet the understanding was mutual. A fragile bridge had formed, sturdy enough to hold them for now, yet delicate enough to shatter if mishandled. And Lily, ever perceptive, smiled knowingly. Her intuition had guided them to this place of tender connection. For the first time in a long while, all three allowed themselves a small taste of hope. Laughter echoed through the empty playground, blending with the whispers of the wind, carrying the promise that love, unexpected, improbable, yet deeply real, was beginning to bloom. Have you ever experienced a moment where vulnerability built an unexpected bond? How did it change your relationship with that person? Share your story in the comments below. The morning had started like any other, but the city had other plans. Paparazzi, Alexander's ever-present shadow, had caught sight of him walking with Sam and Lily through the park. Flashbulbs exploded, cameras clicked, and the story spread across social media before anyone had time to breathe. Within hours, headlines screamed, "Billionaire seen with homeless woman. What does this mean for his family?" Alexander felt a tightening in his chest, a mix of anger, embarrassment, and helplessness. The walls of his empire, walls of wealth, control, and carefully curated image, felt as though they were crumbling. He was unaccustomed to scrutiny that cut beneath the surface. And now it wasn't just his reputation at stake, it was the fragile bond he had built with Sam. He called her immediately. "Sam," his voice was clipped, tense. "We need to talk." "I saw the headlines," she said, her own voice trembling. You didn't warn me." "I didn't know it would happen," he snapped. "I can't control the world outside my doors." His anger was half at the media, half at himself, and a fraction of it, deep inside, at the vulnerability he had allowed. "You could have kept me safe," she shot back. Her eyes glistened with hurt. "I trusted you. I trusted your word." Alexander's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, intending to explain, to apologize, but the words tangled in his pride. Instead, he said the first thing that came out. "Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe you don't belong in my world." Sam recoiled as if struck. The words were sharp, cutting deeper than the cold winds outside ever could. Her hand went to her scarf, gripping it like armor. So all this teaching, helping, bonding, it was meaningless? No. Alexander's voice cracked, though he tried to steady it. It's just, this isn't your life. You shouldn't be here. You don't belong. Sam's lip trembled. She had faced rejection, betrayal, and judgment before, but this was from someone she had begun to trust. Someone she had begun to believe in. And now, the fragile bridge between them threatened to collapse under the weight of his pride and fear. I'll leave, she said quietly, her words heavy with finality. I'll go back to my streets, where I belong. Alexander's chest tightened. He wanted to stop her. He wanted to call her back, to tell her that she belonged with him, with Lily, with a family that didn't yet know how to be whole without her. But the words caught in his throat. Pride, shame, fear, they all combined into a wall he couldn't scale. Sam hung up, leaving Alexander alone with a silence that roared louder than any storm. The office felt cavernous, the walls cold, the air sharp with regret. Lily, who had overheard the fight from a safe distance, ran to him, tugging at his sleeve. Daddy, she's leaving? Her small voice trembled, eyes wide with fear. Don't let her go. Alexander's hands fell to his knees. For the first time, he realized the cost of his pride. Not reputation. Not wealth. Not control. But Lily's happiness. And the loss of Sam, not just the woman, but the friend, the teacher, the bridge that had begun to mend his heart. Meanwhile, Sam trudged through the rain-soaked streets, the headlines in her mind echoing like cruel laughter. She had allowed herself hope, a fragile flicker that someone might see past her status, past the dirt and the scars. And now, it was gone. The billionaire's words burned, but more than that, the thought of being abandoned again cut deeper than any storm ever could. As she walked, memories came unbidden. The warmth of the cafe, Lily's laughter, the way Alexander had allowed himself to be human around her. And suddenly, she questioned herself. Had she truly belonged there, or had she been foolish to hope that a world built on wealth could ever accept someone like her? Hours passed. Alexander sat at the office, staring at the cityscape he once ruled with absolute certainty. He realized that he had been blind, not to Sam's worth, but to his own need. Vulnerability had terrified him, pride had silenced him, and now, he faced the prospect of permanent loss. At night, he sent Lily to bed early and remained in the office, reviewing every moment, every word, every glance he had shared with Sam. The memory of her laughing with Lily, the soft defiance in her eyes, the warmth she had brought into their lives, it became unbearable. He could not let it end this way. Outside, Sam found a quiet corner under an awning, shivering. She wrapped herself in her coat, trying to stave off more than just the cold. Regret mingled with sorrow. Could she ever forgive someone who, even briefly, suggested she didn't belong? Could she ever forgive herself for daring to trust? Yet somewhere, buried beneath her pain, a stubborn ember remained. Lily had believed in her. Alexander had shown glimpses of something real, something human. Maybe, just maybe, there was a path back, but it would require courage she wasn't sure she still had. And in two separate worlds, two hearts ached, one from pride, one from betrayal, each wrestling with the question, could love survive when trust is shattered, when walls rise higher than bridges? Have you ever faced a misunderstanding that threatened to ruin a bond you cared deeply about? The city was quiet in the early hours, a muted palette of grays and golds as dawn stretched its fingers over skyscrapers. Alexander hadn't slept. He sat in his study, hands clasped over his head, replaying the words he had said to Sam, each syllable slicing deeper into his conscience. Pride had silenced him. Fear had hardened him. And now, the woman who had begun to heal his heart was gone. He rose abruptly, pacing the marble floor. Lily's voice echoed in his mind, "Do you want money, or family?" The words struck him like a hammer. Money, his empire, his control, was meaningless if it meant losing the chance at real connection, at love, at redemption. Grabbing his coat, he didn't think twice. He had no plan, no certainty. All he had was the hope that Sam was still somewhere, still human, still willing to listen. Meanwhile, Sam sat on the steps of an abandoned subway entrance, her knees pulled to her chest, staring at the wet pavement. She had hoped distance would dull the sting of Alexander's words, but the ache only deepened. For weeks, She had allowed herself hope that a man with power could see past status, past appearances. Yet his pride had reminded her that the world wasn't built for people like her. Still, there was Lily. That little girl had believed in her, trusted her, loved her. And somewhere in her chest, the ember of possibility refused to die. Could she forgive? Could she risk believing again? Alexander's car cut through the silent streets, his mind consumed by the moments he had failed to cherish. Every traffic light, every honk, every reflection in a shop window reminded him of the cost of hesitation. He had to act. He had to choose vulnerability over pride. By mid-morning, he found her. She was crouched by a park fountain, drawing shapes on the wet pavement with a stick. The city's sounds felt muted, as if the world had conspired to allow this single moment to exist. "Sam," he called, his voice trembling despite attempts at authority. She didn't look up. "Please, don't walk away from this. From me, from Lily, from us." Her hands stilled. Slowly, she raised her head, eyes wary, searching his face for insincerity. But there was none, only raw, unguarded emotion, a vulnerability she had never seen before. "I don't know if I can trust you," she said softly. "You said things, hurtful things. You made me feel invisible again." "I know," he admitted, voice breaking. "I was a fool. My pride, my fear, they made me say words I didn't mean. You've been nothing but brave, patient, and kind. And he swallowed hard. I nearly let all of it slip away because I was too afraid to feel." Sam studied him, the faint tremor in his hands betraying the sincerity of his words. Something in her chest softened. For months she had hidden her heart behind bricks of fear, yet here was a man, powerful, distant, flawed, kneeling figuratively before her honesty and bravery. Lily ran up, breathless, holding a small bundle of sticks and wet leaves. "See, Daddy?" She stayed. "She's listening." Alexander knelt, meeting Sam's eyes at her level. "I'm here because I choose this," he said firmly. "I choose you. I choose Lily. I choose us. I will not let pride or fear take that from me again." Sam hesitated. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled, her shoulders trembling. She took a deep breath, then slowly extended her hand. Alexander reached for it, calloused fingers meeting hers in a quiet, powerful union of trust and acknowledgement. "You won't leave me," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Not this time," he promised. "Not ever, if I can help it." The city seemed to exhale around them. Rain-soaked streets reflected the morning sun, shimmering like hope itself. Lily jumped between them, laughter spilling into the crisp air. "We're a team now, right?" "Yes," Sam said, smiling through tears. "A team." "Yes," Alexander echoed, his voice firm, tender, resolute. Pride had been shed, fear had been faced, and the choice had been made. Love, connection, and trust, the fragile, beautiful kind, had triumphed over all obstacles. In that moment, the past's shadows, the grief, the abandonment, the fear, felt lighter. Alexander and Sam stood side by side, joined by a little girl whose innocence had reminded them both of what truly mattered. They had faced the shatterpoint and emerged stronger, hearts aligned, choices made, futures intertwined. When has vulnerability required you to set aside pride or fear to choose love or connection? The path toward reconciliation is clear. The park was quiet again, bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon sunlight. The echoes of the city seemed distant here, as if the world itself had granted a moment of peace. Alexander, Sam, and Lily walked slowly along the worn cobblestones, their hands brushing together occasionally, a silent affirmation that they were no longer strangers in separate worlds, but three hearts moving in harmony. Alexander glanced at Sam, noting the way her eyes caught the light, how her smile now carried a certainty that had been absent only days before. He had expected pride to retreat after their confrontation, but instead, he found himself more drawn to her than ever, her courage, her gentleness, the way she saw the world differently yet beautifully. "You know," he said quietly, "I've spent years building empires, controlling everything, yet I've never felt anything like this." He gestured vaguely to the park, the sunlight, Lily skipping ahead. This is more real than anything I've ever known." Sam's lips curved into a smile, though there was a softness in her eyes, the shadow of past pain still flickering beneath the surface. "You can have all the money in the world, but it won't fix the things that matter," she said. "Connection, trust, Love. That's what's hard, and that's what's worth protecting. Alexander nodded, feeling the weight of truth in her words. For years, he had sought to protect himself with wealth and control, building walls around a heart that had been broken by grief and loss. Yet in the span of days, a homeless girl, no, a remarkable woman, had reminded him that life's real value lay in being seen, being vulnerable, being present. Lily tugged on their hands, spinning around in delight. Come on. There's more to learn. She dashed toward a patch of daisies poking through the cracks in the concrete, her laughter bright as bells. Sam followed with a light step, Alexander trailing, careful to let her lead. As they settled near the flowers, Sam knelt beside Lily, guiding her tiny hands as she tried to draw the letter B in the soil. Alexander watched, heart swelling, noticing the subtle ways Sam encouraged Lily, the patience in her voice, the warmth in her touch. It was ordinary, simple, but in its ordinariness, it felt sacred. You've taught me a lot, Alexander admitted softly, kneeling beside them. Not letters, not facts, but perspective. Courage. Patience. To see past what's on the surface. Sam glanced at him, eyes shimmering. And you've reminded me, she said gently, that even people who seem untouchable, even billionaires, can learn, can care, can be real. A gentle breeze swept through the park, tugging at their hair, carrying the faint scent of rain and flowers. Lily clapped her hands and ran to Alexander. Teach me now, Daddy. Alexander smiled, pulling a small stick from the ground. All right, he said, kneeling beside her. B is for bravery. Bravery, Lily, means facing what scares you, even if your heart trembles. Sam leaned closer, whispering, she's already brave. She's got your heart. Alexander's hand found hers, fingers lacing together. No words were necessary, they both knew what they were committing to, patience, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. Hours passed with laughter, learning, and quiet moments of reflection. Alexander shared stories of his childhood, mistakes he had made, and the grief he had carried silently. Sam listened, her hand occasionally brushing against his, a subtle acknowledgement that they were now equals, companions, partners in a journey that neither had expected. Even as the shadows lengthened and the city began to hum back into life, their bond felt unshakable. The barriers of wealth, status, and past wounds had fallen away, leaving only the raw, honest connection between them. Later, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting a golden glow across the city, Alexander led them to a small bench overlooking the river. Lily sat between them, leaning against both adults, her head tilted toward Sam. I think, Alexander said, voice low and steady, that this is how life should be. Not perfect. Not without struggles. But filled with people who see you, who choose you, over and over again. Sam nodded, eyes glistening, voice catching slightly. And that choice, it's what makes it real. That's what makes it ours. Lily hugged them both, squeezing tightly. We're a team, right? Yes, Sam said with certainty. A team. Yes, Alexander echoed, his hand brushing the back of hers gently. A team. For the first time in years, Alexander allowed himself to believe that family wasn't defined by money or power, but by presence, care, and the willingness to choose love, even when it's hard. Sam's laughter, Lily's joy, the soft rhythm of their togetherness, it all felt like redemption, healing, and hope wrapped into one. As night fell and stars began to twinkle above the city, Alexander whispered quietly, almost to himself, "Thank you, Sam, for teaching me, for trusting me, for staying." Sam squeezed his hand, the unspoken reply clear in her eyes. We both found each other when we were brave enough to try. And in that moment the past shadows, the grief, the pride, the fear of loss, felt lighter, eclipsed by the warmth of connection and love. Not pity. Not obligation. But genuine, unexpected love that had transformed them all. They stayed there, watching the city lights shimmer on the river, a family forged not by circumstance, but by courage, trust, and the choice to see each other. For Alexander, for Sam, and for Lily, life was no longer about control, it was about presence, heart, and the power of choosing love. As they left the park hand in hand, Alexander glanced at Sam, and with a soft smile said, "We'll face whatever comes together." "Yes," she replied, her voice strong, gentle, unwavering. "Together." The wind whispered around them, carrying the promise of a future where love, trust, and unexpected connections could triumph over fear, pride, and past pain. In that quiet, magical moment, it was clear, Victory had been achieved, hearts had been mended, and love had finally found its place. Have you ever experienced an unexpected connection that changed your life completely? How did it transform you? Share your story below.